What's up, guys? We have a very fun video today. We're going to be reacting to one of my favorite internet content producers, at least when it comes to academic topics and religion, more specifically, Trent Horn. If you don't know Trent, he is a Christian apologist, a self-described Christian apologist. I think he's one of the best out there today, someone I have a lot of respect for and admire, though I am not a Christian. All those who are spiritual and based are welcome at the Idols of the Cave channel. We don't play this game of you have to adopt my spiritual cosmology just to have fun here. No, we can have tons of spiritual discussions, and that's what we're going to be doing today. Now, I like Trent a lot, and the reason I like him because I view him to be a very intelligent, reasonable man. Unfortunately, that intelligence did not manifest in this video, talking about reincarnation. I think he made some uncharacteristically bad arguments, and I will want to respond to them. So, let's see. First, let's talk about my spiritual cosmology for a second. So I essentially follow Rudolf Steiner's outline of the esoteric science. Rudolf Steiner, the distinction between him and other people who claim to know the quote-unquote other side, if you'll excuse my rational emphasis on space, is that he took the scientific method over to the quote-unquote other side, and he was a scientist on this side. So he had a great respect for science and rationality. It's if you watch my anti-rationalism series, you know that not all rationality is not the end-all be-all, but it's also very important. So essentially what he did is he realized that souls exist in this other side. It's a very complex, very vast process of soul creation. I'm not going to get into all of it now, but we'll break it down to its fine points. Number one, the soul exists, and the reason why Earth, humans, and everything in this world exists is because souls incarnate into a particular body. And the reason why is because you, my friend, are spiritually designed to go through something. Now, this something could be anything, and it depends on the soul, it depends on the purpose. It could be cancer or some other disease that could kill or cause extreme bodily harm. It could be a mental health problem like bipolar or schizophrenia, maybe depression, that was probably mine, drug addiction, the death of a loved one, though that might not be it because that happens to everyone. Maybe you lost tragically a limb when you were in an accident at work, maybe you fell off a ladder or something like that. The point is, a financial catastrophe, that's a big one. The point is you were designed to go through this hard time, the death pole of the soul, if you will, and come out of it with a new realization of some profound wisdom of the soul. So maybe you realize money isn't everything. Maybe you realize that maybe in my past life, I didn't appreciate the benefit of having a full, healthy body, and I had to lose my arm to now go through that and appreciate it. So now when I go up there, if you will, my soul has come and learned that knowledge. And we reincarnate through potentially thousands of different lives to go through this process. And the whole reason we do this is because apparently they don't really have suffering like we do down here. Up there, everything's pretty, benign and divine. So they have to create this little place so we can learn about suffering more and we have a stronger degree of appreciation for these values. You have a life preview. So essentially your soul has a very quick movie trailer of what happens in your life, all the big things. You also have a life review. So when you die, apparently you go through exactly that, a life review. And apparently it's very that can be very difficult because they're going to go with a fine-tooth comb over every single one of your sins and every single one of your mistakes. And they're going to say, yeah, you could have done that, you could have done that. And I remember hearing a story from John David Ebert, that is. Some guy, he was like a multimillionaire, maybe tens or if not hundreds of millions of dollars, and he had this near-death experience, or a death experience, and he went through this life review process. He went through this thing, he experienced it, but then for whatever reason his soul came back. And he said he was very proud of himself for going up to these angels, whatever you want to call them. When I call them angels, they're not Christian angels, but the angels are the things who facilitate the spiritual process. And he went up to those angels and he said, well, aren't you guys proud of me? I look at my business. I tell them I said $1 billion. I mean, that's crazy, right? And apparently they were not happy with that. They said, we don't give a shit about that. What about that woman on the college bench corner that you just walked by when she was crying? Tell us about that. They had no cares in the world for your material gains. So keep that in mind. What else? You also reincarnate in groups. So your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, your wife, your husband, these are people who you reincarnate with together so you can help go through these processes. So in a way, if you and your mom say have a bad split and it ends with one of you dying and that's that, you'll get another chance in the next life. So don't use that as an excuse to do whatever you want here, but it does kind of help. What else? Also, there's a thing called the law of karmic balance. It's very important. So if you go too far in one direction, guess what? In the next life, you're going to be the victim of that. So if you decide that you want to be a murderer, you're going to be a murder victim. If you decide you want to assault women or assault children, you're going to reincarnate as a woman or as a child and be assaulted. So please, please, please be very careful with what you do. I think that's a very basic outline of my spiritual cosmology. Obviously relevant to this video, reincarnation is very important. And with that being said, let's get into it.
Lots of people say, I'm spiritual, not religious, but they end up just creating...
Okay, so I am spiritual. I'm sorry, I'm going to let this run because I'm going to let this play for the first couple minutes and let him build his argument, but I do want to say something. I am spiritual, but not religious. The Christians don't like hearing that. It's not that I'm against being religious. It's that my spiritual cosmology, mythology, whatever you want to call it, is held by such an ineffectual minority and such a small quantity of people. We just simply don't have the numbers to build out churches and do all these rituals. It's not that I'm against doing that, though I would do it in a, I think, measured and tempered way. Some Christians are insane. But yeah, I'm not against being religious. It's just the cosmology I adhere to is so small that, so yeah, I'm spiritual but not religious.
Their own religion, usually based on New Age beliefs that became popular in the 1970s, which themselves are just a repackaging of many ancient Eastern religious practices. And one of those common beliefs among the merely spiritual is belief in reincarnation, the idea that after you die, you are reborn into another body. According to the Pew Research Center, 1/3 of all U.S. adults believe in reincarnation, which includes 26% of Protestants and 38% of Catholics.
All right. I didn't know that. That's pretty good. That makes me feel pretty good because that means if I spread the gospel, if you will, it might actually land on fertile ground. All right.
Now, these probably aren't the most devout members of those groups, but it's still shocking to see because belief in reincarnation has tragic consequences. And that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we do that, I hope you will hit the subscribe button and like this episode, not because you want good karma, but just because you're a good viewer who enjoys our work and will even consider supporting us for as little as $5 a month at TrentHornPodcast.com. Now,
Number one, go subscribe to Trent. He's a very bright guy. Even if you're an atheist, I don't know why you would be if you're on my channel. Even if you're a rationalist atheist, I would still recommend subscribing to Trent. He's a very intelligent guy. It's always good to hear the other perspective. If you're not mature enough to hear the other side, then you shouldn't be getting involved in any of these discussions anyways. Number two, I also forgot to mention, karma is very important, obviously. And karmic luck is a real thing. So yes, in a sense, you will be rewarded to a certain extent based on past virtues. So.
Now, one place where the tragedy of belief in reincarnation can be seen on full display is the nation of India, home to 94% of the world's Hindu population, and about half the population believes in reincarnation.
Wait, you don't write anything down after conversations?
Get out of here. I hate ads. I hate ads. I hate ads.
Also entails the corresponding doctrine of karma, which says, basically, if you are bad in life, you'll be reborn into a worse life, and if you're good in life, you'll be reborn into a better life. This has been used to defend India's caste system, which is a social hierarchy based on your family of origin.
Okay, so there's a couple points here. One, I don't think... first of all, I know nothing about Indian history, Indian mythology, Indian philosophy. I'm vaguely familiar with Sri Aurobindo, and that's about it. I watched that Gandhi movie. It was way too long, and that's all I know about India. So I have nothing for or against India, so when I defend them, it's not because I hate the West or anything like that. Number one, if there are problems with the Indian caste system, I fail to see how that necessitates from reincarnation. Obviously, Trent explained it pretty well. If you were immoral in a bad life, or morally bad, to put it less eloquently, well, then you will be born into a worse life. So that means the people you see contemporarily today, if they're in a bad circumstance, well, that must mean they were bad in the past life, and therefore they deserve to be stuck in their place. Again, I fail to see how this is necessitated from karma. I actually find it to be the opposite. So, if we have someone in the lower caste system and we believe that they have been spiritually placed here because of past karmic sins, wouldn't it make sense if we're all undergoing this grand process of spiritual reincarnation? wouldn't it make sense to allow this lower caste this space to improve? Because if you keep them there, they are never going to have the opportunity to be virtuous. And if they're never going to have the opportunity to be virtuous, they can never go through that spiritually ordained experience that allows them to learn the spiritual virtues that we talked about. So I actually find the opposite. I actually find it makes you more empathetic. You look at the people in the lower caste system and you think, well, one, that was me a few lifetimes ago. So I don't know, maybe I should treat them the way I wanted them to treat me back then. And number two, again, just because you are here now, the whole point is you keep coming back, you cycle back from terrestrial and spiritual. So it would be foolish and against the logic of reincarnation and karma to keep them in that lower caste system. So the problem with the Indian caste system, I think, really has to do with deficient, in Gebser's terms, deficient magical and mythical residue, which is to say more for the uninitiated, it's deficient aspects of our pre-rational and irrational faculties that don't necessitate a dismissal of karma. I think that's very silly. Two, let's say the Indian caste system is bad. Okay, sure, maybe it is. I think as a Christian, this is you're in a glass house if you want to make this argument. The Bible was used to justify slavery. I would argue slavery is at minimum equally as bad as this caste system, probably a little worse. Now, if I'd imagine what a Christian would say is, no, the Bible does not justify slavery. That is a distortion of the Bible, and it's just people acting in sin and using the Bible to anchor their claims in the spiritual authority. Great. Are you going to find that same nuance when it comes to Indian reincarnation and karma? Because when it comes to Christianity, when I make the claim that people did absolutely, which is 100% true, appeal to the Bible to justify awful sins like slavery, okay, well, I know Trent would never accept that because he would find the nuance. But when it comes to Indian reincarnation, oh, we have a bad thing. It's justified spiritually. Therefore, the spirituality is bad. Okay, well then Christianity should have been gone a while ago, don't you think? I'm not picking on the Christians. I'm just trying to point out an inconsistency. I'm ambivalent on Christianity. There's a lot of good stuff, a lot of bad. It's kind of like I don't know. It's kind of like colonialism, where there's just so much there that you can find evidence to make whatever story you want.
The lowest caste are the Dalit, previously called the Untouchables, who were treated essentially like lepers and segregated in society, being relegated to jobs in areas like sanitation or dead animal disposal because they were considered the most unclean group.
Again, this is not necessitated from reincarnation. It's just not, and I can use these exact same arguments with slavery.
Discrimination against lower castes is justified by the assumption that the members of the lower castes must have been evil in a previous life in order to be reincarnated into that caste. India outlawed...
Yeah, and justifying slavery is on the justification that the slaves are not actually people of God, they're emissaries of Satan, or whoever it is.
Caste discrimination in 1950, but it persists in many aspects of Indian culture. The Catholic Church was instrumental in fighting the caste system and has routinely denounced it as gravely sinful. But these prejudices have even been seen in Catholic communities. Thankfully, more positive steps seem to be taken, and in February of this year, the Indian Catholic Bishops' Conference elected its first Dalit president. However, belief in reincarnation along with New Age ideology can be found throughout the affluent Western world too. To give you an example, I want to share a sad story about a young man named Brandon Bremer. He was a prodigy who learned to read at 18 months and completed high school by age 10. But in 2005, at the age of 14, Brandon took his own life.
Jesus, that's awful. Imagine taking your life at 14. Whew.
We don't know why Brandon did this, but we know that having an extremely high IQ and atypical neurological patterns like autism can make someone more at risk for self-destructive thoughts.
I feel personally attacked.
But what really struck out to me for Brandon's case was the book his mother Patty wrote after his death called Guided Destiny, where she turns to New Age belief and reincarnation to cope with the loss of her son. On one website, she says of the book, "The words that appeared on the paper, words that were not mine, words I believe came through the soul of my son through my fingers onto the keys. Most religions confirm that a soul never dies.
True.
What I learned were the many lives of souls. reincarnation.
True.
This can be seen early on in the book where Patty describes her difficult labor with Brandon and how a heartbeat was not detected, so doctors feared the worst. Brandon's mother then describes, not as an eyewitness, but more as a storyteller, how an angel named Tobias was present in the room during all of this, and that the soul of her unborn child left his body and was replaced by this angel named Tobias. She writes, Tobias watched the young soul leave the room. Tobias knew this soul had come to Earth not properly prepared for such a complicated human birth. He had grown frightened by the pain and the anguish that permeated the room. The young soul lacked the experience to help the family through this difficult time. Brandon's mother then says Tobias had spent many lifetimes here on Earth. With each lifetime, he acquired vast amounts of knowledge. Tobias felt the need to teach. She then says, before her son was born, Tobias smiled at the parents. He looked around the room, then glanced upward from whence he had come. He condensed his form to fit into the baby. Tobias, now to be called Brandon, was born.
This one alpaca hoodie.
No one cares. I'm not entirely sure what point Trent is making here. Yes, obviously, people will turn to spirituality and religious, and they will corrupt them based on the psychic temporicity of losing a child. I mean, yeah, maybe we'll see if there's a better.
The Brandon's name in articles has two N's. In the book, Patty says Brandon added an extra N to his name one day when he was 2 years old and said it wasn't a mistake. The memoir then narrates the event from Tobias's perspective. My family has allowed me to change the spelling of my earthly name. I presented the change as a test of my freedom. My choice received thought and respect.
Okay, 2 points. One, first of all, look at this photo. It looks like the front cover of one of those assisted suicide books. I got gifted those for Christmas a few times. Very terrible cover. And I don't know what to say about the point he's making here. Obviously, a woman who's going through a lot is perhaps not speaking the most rationally. Yeah.
I have learned my family values me and my decisions. Now, obviously, this is a very tragic case, and a lot of the story related to Brandon is reminiscent of the indigo child fad popular in New Age circles that developed in the 1970s.
Okay. We're going to skip ahead a little bit because they talk about the indigo children. It's not bad, but it's
often experience strange dreams, past life memories of.
It's not terrible, but it's not that relevant. Number one, if the idea is that reincarnation leads to self-destructive acts, if the actor believes in it. Now, I know this was a movie, but do you remember the movie Nightmare Alley, directed by Del Toro? What happens in that movie is that it's Richard Jenkins and the mom from Step Brothers, I believe. I can never remember his name. Actually, it might be that same duo. And what happens is their son dies, I believe it is. Very tragic. And they believe in God. They believe in the Christian God in heaven. So one day, the father walks into the kitchen, and the mother is standing there with this big grin on her face. And she says, we're finally going to meet Daniel, we'll say it is. And he goes, what are you talking about? Daniel's dead. She takes out a gun, blows his brains out. He says, we're going to heaven. We're going to go meet Daniel. Blows her brains out. It's very sad, very tragic, very impactful scene. Again, we can play this game too. There were sacrifices. Do you want me to appeal to people like David Koresh? What do you want? I mean, it's just not a real point, especially when you consider that this is a woman who just came off losing a child. Like, what is this?
More as a storyteller.
Okay, so we're going into. I skipped ahead a little bit. Hold on. We finished up the section about, again, indigo children. It's some dumb new age spiritual crap. I have no idea what it is. It's just dumb, but it's not really that relevant to reincarnation.
Often experience strange dreams, past life memories of other worlds, and a deep knowing that they have a cosmic purpose. Now, this may seem like harmless kookiness, but it has real consequences. For example, I did a previous episode on how when weird things happen, it's not always demons, but sometimes it is demons. And it seems clear that if someone encounters a so-called spiritual being that leads them to belief in a lie like reincarnation, then they're dealing with a fallen angel or a demon. And
got it. So we're presupposing that reincarnation is a lie. And what are we basing this presupposition on? An appeal to the Bible, the spiritual cosmology that has no room for reincarnation. Respectfully, no shit. You have not proven the Christian God is true and real and whatever. So you appealing to the Bible and saying the Christian God said reincarnation isn't true, no duh. That's the whole point. Um, it's not making the point you think it's making, or point the reason why. And by the way, um, you'll never be able to you'll never be able to rationally prove definitively that the Christian God exists for two reasons. One, rationality is limited to the quantifiably measurable, consciously known. Christians out there, Trent Horn fans out there, if you despise me, join the list, join the club. You never have to talk to me or see me ever again. Please go watch Kill Rationalism videos 1 and 2. They will they will give you the tools to destroy atheists, okay? Every atheist is a one-trick pony. They are rationalists who use rationalism to deconstruct mythological or spiritual claims. They do not even understand these claims, let alone can actually offer a proper refutation. God, or the gods, or spirit, or the spiritual other side, is quantifiably immeasurable and consciously unknown, which is the antithesis of the quantifiably measurable and consciously known. That is the number one reason you will never be able to rationally prove that the Christian God exists, just like I'll never be able to rationally prove that reincarnation exists. That's number one. So Christians, again, atheists are one-trick ponies. Take out the one trick and you have destroyed them. Attack them on that. Here's what you say. Next time you talk to an atheist, here's exactly what you say. Real quick. Considering that rationality is limited to the quantifiably immeasurable and consciously known, and God is immeasurable and mostly unknown, he's essentially a giant mystery, why should I use rationality to attain knowledge of God? And then just shut up. Don't say a word and watch. Why wouldn't you? Well, it's limited to, and then you just keep going, right? So that's number one. Number two, I've seen Trent's videos, and unfortunately, he relies on logic and rationality to prove the existence of God. We already talked about how that's already a doomed failure, but even if you ignore that, it's still doomed because there's two kind of truths, right? Truths of reason and truths of contingency. So a truth of reason is essentially when the predicate is presupposed by the subject. It must necessarily be true. So the bachelor is unmarried is a good example of a truth of reason. The subject, the bachelor, is unmarried. The predicate. The predicate is the part of the sentence that relates to the subject. It must necessarily be the case that the bachelor is unmarried because that's what the definition of bachelor is. The airplane has wings. Same thing. It must necessarily, the predicate has wings is presupposed in the subject. That's a truth of reason. And that, unfortunately, is the manner of argumentation that a lot of Christians go down. They go down the wrong road because they're not positing God as some purely abstract, definitionally true whatever. No, God is a person, entity, divine being, it, whatever you want to call it, that is external. It is a truth of contingency. And truth of contingencies, I have to actually go out into the world and verify. For example, if I say Barack Obama is 8 feet tall and 600 pounds, I can't close my eyes and say, yeah, the bachelor is unmarried. Yeah, that's a truth of reason. I don't even have to look at anything. I could just know that through basic logic. No, I have to go out and verify in the world. Well, that's where God belongs. So all arguments should be aimed at this section, not this sort of the 5 logical proofs for the existence of God. It's absurd. Have the courage to walk away from these useless discussions and fill your time with more fruitful conversations that actually go with the grain and they meet the challenge where it is. So um, uncharacteristically bad argument from Trent here. Reincarnation, it doesn't exist. How do we know it doesn't exist? Because the Bible says it can. How do we know that the Bible is true and the Bible exists above all other spiritualities? Well, we're just going with it. We're just vibes, man.
And not a true messenger of God. Second, childhood, and especially the teenage years, is hard enough to navigate and learn how to socially adapt to without thinking that you're a reincarnated angel or alien.
What? Yeah, and childhood and teenage adolescence is difficult to adapt to, especially when you are worried that every mistake or sin you make is going to send you to hell where you burn in purgatory forever. Like, come on, we can do these arguments both ways. Why are we finding the nuance when it comes to Christianity? But when it comes to reincarnation, like, this is so uncharacteristic of Trent. Like, Trent is I'd happily concede that Trent is a more intelligent than man. He's infinitely more well-read than I am, especially when it comes to theological matters. Not even close. I'm just so shocked that he's making these arguments.
This isn't helpful to accomplish those goals of maturing through these years, and it's probably going to exacerbate other things like mental illness or clinical depression.
I disagree. I'm sorry. Again, reincarnation has helped me interpersonally and psychologically so much because it makes you an empathetic person, which I think we'll actually get onto. I don't want to spoil.
Hi, I'm Carrie.
Reincarnation, it does not necessitate this sort of psychologically destructive traits that Trent is talking about. Any deficient spirituality is going to necessitate that. It's not reincarnation itself, it's the deficient engagement with it.
Third, belief in reincarnation robs people of the joy God wants us to have in Jesus Christ. As a parent, it gives me a heavy heart to read a book written by someone who lost a child. But one of the hopes we have in Christ is that our loved ones are not gone forever. They also aren't shuffled off into some other life we don't know about.
What? No, first of all, you're not shuffled off into another life you don't know about. You all reincarnate in groups. That's number one. So reincarnation gives you best of both worlds. Not only do we know we're going to meet again on the spiritual quote-unquote other side, because that's the whole point of cycling through this, which meets the Christian standard that he set here. So we've already met that. And we go one step beyond that, because not only do we see them again in the spiritual other side, we're going to see them again on earth. What happens on earth stays on earth. So we get 2 for 1, where you only have 1.
We can still express love for that person by praying for him or her as they await the resurrection of the dead. Where we
how does a singular life span, this conception of time, rather than the cyclical, this one-off? I don't understand the point he's making. With reincarnation, you have the knowledge that any mistakes made in this life, which are going to be numerous and necessary because that's just life, you will have another opportunity. In the Western Christian version, if I do something terrible, there's nothing I can do to go back in time or go ahead in the future to undo that mistake. When I die, and that's it. I'm very confused about the spiritual point he's making. I have a feeling that it's going to be more detrimental to someone's mental health when they look back at their life. And they look at all the mistakes they made. And they go, wow, I'm 15 minutes from dying, and there is nothing I can do about this, and I have to worry about if I'm getting into heaven, which is going to be amazing, or I'm going to hell, which is going to be like the polar opposite. Like as amazing and utopian as heaven is, hell is going to be its equal opposite. That seems a little more destructive to the mental health rather than this idea of, look, I came down to this soul on this body. I'm only halfway through my journey. I can't expect to be perfect. I can't expect to be a little Jesus figure. I'm going to come back down here. I'm going to take what I learned, and I'm going to use it, and I'm going to make this world a better place. That, to me, is a more healthy way of engaging than whatever he's talking about here.
We have a hope of being reunited with them in the life to come. Finally, reincarnation fools us into
we are reunited with them in both lives to come.
Thinking that we have unlimited time to work our way into heaven. But heaven is not something we can merit solely through our own human works.
Okay, heaven, you will never get to heaven through reincarnation. So, again, this entire thing is like, if we were all Christians, I would agree with this statement, and I would not be arguing with him, but we're not. You keep appealing to the Bible and Christianity. My whole point is that my spiritual is, for better or worse, different than yours. So don't appeal to yours to say mine isn't true. That's the whole point, that it's different than yours. You have to appeal to something else. Now, I don't know what, but saying that it's not true because the Bible says so, yeah, I know.
It is the gift of God, and we each have one life in which to accept or reject it. That's why I don't get the fascination with Andy Weir's short story, The Egg, which describes a person dying and finding out that they have been reincarnated thousands of times, and everybody else in the universe is just another reincarnated version of them. As science fiction, it's a neat concept and helpful to teach people empathy and to ask the question, what if I had been born into other circumstances? What would my life be like? But some people get wrapped up into the story so much thinking that it's real and how beautiful that would be, when in reality, if this were true, it would be totally nihilistic. It wouldn't matter what choices you made in life because you have to live out every good and every evil person's life, as if that was the only way to attain knowledge. And you couldn't truly love others because reality would just be a diluted kind of self-love if you think God made the whole universe just for you and you are all that matters. As I said, it's an interesting story, but when it comes to the way the world actually works, the Catechism of the Catholic Church says, death is the end of man's earthly pilgrimage, of the time.
All right, so number one, did you even know that book existed? I guess these criticisms would be true if literally anyone adopted this. Reincarnation does not mean that you are everyone else. That's the whole point. We all have different souls. You watching this, I'm not you in a different. You have your own soul. You're on your own timeline, your own thing. I mean, like, yeah. He started criticizing um, the caste system and reincarnation. Is that what the Indians believe? I have a feeling that's not what it is. So it just feels like kind of a giant straw man. Like, okay, if literally anyone believed this and anyone, go ahead. Let's talk about empathy for a second. Um, Kind of like I made the point with the caste system in India. When you look at people do terrible things, now this is easier said than done. What you need to realize through reincarnation and going through this little journey of soul improvement and cycling, you did that. That was you in a previous life. As John said, we are all murderers and we have all been murdered. You have to incarnate here to learn these things. So you can learn control. You can learn, hey, let's stop acting like animals. Let's stop killing each other. Maybe you have to learn that eye for an eye is bad morality, whatever it is. So in a way, I do think it makes you a little more empathetic because you immediately realize, instead of saying, hold up, that's not me, and I would never do that, you say, yeah, that's not me, but that was me. You know what I mean? So I think it makes you a little more empathetic. Now, this varies to an extent, right? If you have people who are murderers, uh, if you have people who are, assaulters of children, it's a little more difficult to accept this because that's a level of evil that it's hard to explain. And to be clear, I don't believe that criminals should be let out of jail. I'm not a woke leftist, okay? That's not what this is. I despise those people. If you murder someone on here, you need to be in jail for the rest of your life. And just because you see someone murdered, someone murdered, don't think that that person necessarily must have been a murderer in his past life. That's not how it works. Free will exists, and free will actually messes things up. Yes, I think a healthy integration of reincarnation leads to more empathy and a more spiritually fulfilled life for that connection, that reason. You were that. Everything you're complaining about, you were. So that gives you reason to pause and say, hold on now. Let's not be so judgmental. Let's try to take the bigger spiritual view. And I just think it's spirit. We'll let this go on for another minute or so, but then we'll wrap it up.
Time of grace and mercy which God offers him so as to work out his earthly life in keeping with the divine plan, and to decide his ultimate destiny. When the single course of our earthly life is completed, we shall not return to other earthly lives. It is appointed for men to die once, Hebrews 9:27. There is no reincarnation after death. In the 3rd century, the ecclesial writer Origen wrote that reincarnation, which he called transmigration, was foreign to the Church of God and not handed down.
So we'll pretty much end it here. Last couple of things I'll say is I love you, Trent. I really do. I hope I wasn't too harsh on you. I do have a lot of respect for you. You're essentially just presupposing that we're all Christians, and then you're appealing to the Bible to say that reincarnation isn't true. Alas, I am not a Christian, so therefore you appealing to the Bible doesn't really mean much to me. I just expected a little. I don't know. I can't stress how much I do respect Trent, and I think he's a bright guy. I don't agree with him a ton, but he's a bright guy, and I like listening to his perspective. I also like when people make fun of atheists too. I think even when I was an atheist, I thought it was funny when people made fun of atheists. So that'll be the last kind of major point. And the final point I'll make is spiritually, why don't we just kind of call a spade here? Remember my little discussion about truths of reason and how spirituality can never be rationally proven because rationality is limited to the quantifiably measurable and consciously known, and the spiritual, all that stuff, is quantifiably immeasurable and consciously unknown. Why don't we just be a little more honest about that? What Trent and I are doing is we have a board, right? Ace comes out, king comes out, king comes out, queen. So we have ace, ace, king, king, queen. Trent and I are both pretending that we have pocket aces, right? So we're both pretending that we have 4 aces, and nothing is going to beat 4 aces unless we get a royal flush. In reality, though, we have a 7-2 offsuit, and if you don't know anything about poker, that means we have nothing. We have nothing in our hands. We're both pretending that our spiritual cosmologies can be rationally proven, and the reason we do that is so we want to anchor our claims in a spiritual domain so they have more validity to them. Alas, I don't think it's possible. I like to try to convince people of my spiritual cosmology, but at the end of the day, I don't appeal to logic, I don't appeal to rationality, or at least not just that. I appeal to something else. So why don't I just think we should start being a little more honest here? We all believe in the spirit. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not an atheist. I think the rationalists are morons. Uh, but why don't we kind of pull back a little bit with this idea that we need to impose everything because we are just so sure of it? You're never going to be sure of it because the epistemic system, rationality, employed to attain assuredness, well, is limited, like I've covered. Thank you guys so much, Trent, Council of Trent fans. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys stick around. Again, please, 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 please. If you hate me, that's fine. All right, just go watch Kill Rationalism 1 and 2. You will have the perfect arguments against these atheists. I have convinced very, very, very intelligent, very well read, very strict rationalist on this principle. They have accepted, they don't accept, it's not like they're going to church every week or anything like that, but they do accept a spiritual principle, and it's because they do accept this. So I love you guys. I will see you soon, and thank you so much.